This set of videos is about Laurence Jackson School in Gisborough, in what used to be North Yorkshire but is now Cleveland, Redcar, Cleveland County. It'll be of absolutely no interest to you unless you actually went to the place or have some connection with it. But I have a lot of records from there which I've spent months and months and months digitising, and it would be a great shame if they were all thrown out, and a substantial number of them were at one time, or indeed if somebody presses a delete button and they all disappear into cyberspace. So what I thought I'd do is I would stick them all on YouTube. They consist from the most part of photographs and photocopied pages from books and newspaper records. But there is some video to do with the buildings, particularly the recent new build. As there are so many of these photographs and photocopies, each one only runs for 10 seconds. So if you want to see more, you've obviously got to press your pause button so you can read it in more detail. That's probably more particularly important with newspaper articles. And you also might have to use that little circle with a plus sign out. It's a zoom thing, that's it, yeah. You also might have to use that zoom button in order to enlarge newspaper articles so you can read them more clearly, if that's what you wish. Anyway, this first video is about the buildings, and I need a little crib for this. So I've got it in front of me, so if I keep looking down, that's what I'm referring to, this little piece of paper which I've got. It all started with a fellow called George Venables. He had been a native of the town, but had gone to work in London, had made a few bob, and he came back to retire to Gisborough. But when he got back, he realised that whilst there was education for the better off in the town, at Gisborough Grammar School, there was absolutely nothing for the poor of the town. Nothing at all. And although he'd retired, he then decided he would go back to London and start up his business again, and whatever money he made he would use to build a school. And he had great difficulty doing it, but eventually he raised a few quid, and with sort of subscriptions from some friends that he sponged off, he managed to build a school on the corner of Westgate and New Road, on a lump of land that was given to him free by the Challoners, who were the sort of big landowners in the town. And this is a photograph of the school. It was built in 1792, and then although Venables died in 1813, and the school continued to grow, and in 1821 it was extended, and an infant school was added to it. And the first master was a fellow called Ralph Med, and a mistress called Mrs. Isabella Peacock, which comes from the Walter Brelstaff archive. He's a well-known Gisborian. He died now, with a great interest in the town. You can see that this school, which was built by Venables, had a great big clock on the front, and above it was a great big bell, so there was absolutely no excuse for being late, because this bell tolled when you had to be in school. It actually tolled when the school finished. So I suppose that told parents that their kids were on the way home. Now an important Education Act was passed in the 1870s compulsory education for everybody up to 13, I think it was. And as a consequence of that, the school in Westgate was closed and a new school was built down in Rectory Lane. But an extra school was added, which was called Northgate School. And it was built up on a site on Wilton Lane. Although it's actually called Northgate. They say it was built on the corner of Northgate, but I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure it was built on the site of Wilton. I'm sure it was built on Wilton Lane. But it was only for boys and infants. Now at some time during all this, the senior boys and senior girls all went to the new school down in Rectory Lane, and the school in Wilton Lane just became an infant school. When the new school was built in Wilton Lane, I would think it'd be in the 1960s, the old school closed and became a teacher's centre. But eventually that closed down and it stood there empty for years and years and years. Anyway, in 2014 it's been flattened. They're obviously going to build houses on the site. I mean, a lot of people wanted to retain the school as part of the sort of history, but I mean, goodness knows what you'd have done with the building. It was a substantial thing. And the master's house, which was next door, on the corner of Northgate and Wilton Lane, is now the veterinary surgeons. So these are a couple of photographs of Providence School, the new school in Rectory Lane. Providence School in Rectory Lane. They keep calling it Providence Lane. It may have been Providence Lane when it first opened, but anyway, I only remember it as Rectory Lane. Opened in 1879, and it remained there until 1958. A new Education Act was passed in 1944, which resulted in the tripartite system and the 11+, that dreadful examination. If you passed the 11+, you went to grammar school. So new grammar schools were founded all over the place. If you failed the 11+, you had two choices. You went to a technical school, of which very, very few were ever founded, or for the vast majority, 80% of the population in the North Riding of Yorkshire went to secondary moderns, of which Providence became one. Now, being down in Rectory Lane, it was opposite the foundry. So the noise, the dust and the fume, if the wind was in the wrong directions, were just totally intolerable and really detrimental to health. In addition to that, it had no green playing fields, so any sport took place on the town playing fields, the council playing fields, which was a substantial walk away. So there was obviously a great need for a new school. And plans were put forward, I think it was 1956, to build a new school, which was completed in 1958. And everybody traipsed up from Providence School, no doubt carrying a box or something, to the new school, which was opened on the outskirts of town. And it was called Gisborough County Secondary Modern School. the first headmaster was a chap called Joe Morgan. He was appointed, I think, about 1955-56 to be headmaster of Providence School. He was an ex-Gisbornean. He had been educated at the grammar school. But more about him later. He appears in a separate video of his own. And the senior mistress was a Mrs. Proctor, Marion Proctor, and the deputy head was a Mr. John Harrison. Flash. Now, following the election of a Labour government, it was decided that this tripartite system had to go. The 11 plus had to disappear. It was a very divisive examination. If you passed and went to grammar school, well, that was fine. If you didn't pass, your parents had to be rich enough to send you for private education, or you went to a secondary modern school, where, for the most part, you were educated for factory or farm work if you were a lad, or domesticity of some description if you were a girl. In 1968 or thereabouts, the North Riding of Yorkshire decided that comprehensive education would be introduced throughout the county, with rare exception, and Gisborough County Secondary Modern School would be one of those. On becoming comprehensive, the name was changed to Laurence Jackson School. It was named after Colonel Laurence Jackson, although he had been a major during the war. Colonel was a TA title. He had been a stalwart in North Riding of Yorkshire politics. He was in fact chairman of the Education Committee for something like 20 years, and he lived in Gisborough, along at the west end of town. The badge, which had previously been the Demi-Seawolf of Lord Gisborough, was changed, and a new badge was designed, which is the current school badge. So let's have a look at the building of Gisborough County Secondary Modern School, which ultimately became Laurence Jackson School. And this took place between 1956 and 1958.